Hi, everyone. Welcome to Statistically Speaking. This is a video series where we talk about why we should care about statistics in B2B marketing research. I am Sara Boostani. I am a market research analyst at 6 Sense, and I am joined by my co-host and partner in all things research at 6 Sense, Kerry Cunningham. Hey, Kerry.
Hey, Sara. Good to be here, and we're excited about getting on with these episodes. This will be fun.
So today we are talking about variability, which is really at the core of what we're trying to understand in statistics, and we're trying to explain and potentially control. So we'll be talking about what is variability, how do we measure it, and how do we use statistics to explain it? So variability, what is it? Variability refers to the differences or fluctuations in what is being measured. Just simply, variability is just how things differ, right? It's in business, it's in our everyday lives, it's all around us, it's happening all the time.
You know, why does one quarter's results look different from another's? Why does one ad seem to work more than another? Why do some people get paid more than another? Why are some buying processes longer than another? It's really all about the fact that when we're doing things in the real world, they never come out the same way twice in a row. And how do we understand what's causing those things that we're interested in to not be the same? It's really at the heart of everything. So it's simple to say variability, but it really is just at the heart of everything there is to know, pretty much anywhere in the world. And everything that we're going to talk about today is really applicable everywhere. We're going to talk about B2B stuff, but it's good for everything.
Variability is just everywhere we look. And just a simple example in everyday life is the weather. So in Chicago, there's a lot of variability, right? There is really cold temperatures in the winter. We're getting snow. We're putting on our mittens, our snow boots. And then in the summer, gets up to the 70s and the 80s. So this is an example of where something varies a lot.
There's two kinds of variability we can see here, right? So there's variability going across the months where temperatures are obviously much higher in the summertime than they are in the wintertime. But there's also variability in the high and low temperatures, right? So you can see January 43 to 22, it's about a 20-degree difference between low and high temperatures that time of year. And that difference is really pretty similar throughout the year. So the high and the low temperatures tend to vary together a lot, where you see even in the summer where the temperatures are much warmer, the range of variability within the same day is about the same as it is in the winter. It's just at a different level. So there's really two kinds of variability there, two flavors of it that we have to be thinking about or might want to be thinking about, particularly if you're going to Chicago.
And then for other places of the world, like Singapore, there's not much.
Yeah. Here, there's even less variability, right? So in Chicago, it was 13, 14, up to 20 or so degrees difference in a given day, but 50, 60 degrees across different parts of the year. In Singapore, you can see that the biggest difference is maybe between low and high in a day is about 10 degrees. And there's virtually no difference across the months of the year. Every month is more or less the same. Now, the amount of rain that they get differs across the year. And we could look at that, but there's very little variability there. And the interesting thing there is if you were to say, I want to predict what the temperature is going to be in Singapore, you don't even have to know what month it is. And you can make a very good prediction about what the low and the high temperatures are going to be and what the average for the day is going to be. But if you try to make a prediction in Chicago about what the temperature is going to be on a day, you got to know the month. Or you're not going to be anywhere near it.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are ways in statistics that we can measure how much variability exists in our results, in our campaigns, in BDR performance. And there's ways that we can specifically put a number to that and measure just how much variability there is. We aren't going to go into the specific terms on this slide, but I just wanted to show this to give us a feel that there are, different methods that we use to understand just how much there is. And once we understand how much variability exists, there are ways we can understand what is driving that, if anything, or is it maybe a random occurrence? So, this is an example from a study that Kerry and I did in 2023. We measured how much do marketers make? And we would probably assume that there's a lot of variability. There's a high range in that number, right? And we think of things like position level or education, potentially gender, what industry they're in. All those we would assume to kind of affect pay. And we did a statistical test that we will talk about later on in the series, but we put in all of the measurements that we collected in the study, and it explains 47% why pay varies from the average. Kerry and I both got our master's in applied psychology doing a lot of research, and I think we'd be jumping up and down to find 10% of why something varies. Human behavior is, it varies a lot. And in this instance, we were able to understand almost 50% of why compensation is more or less than the average pay. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of things that would potentially affect pay that we can't really measure. It might be, just how someone fits in with the culture at the company, or their negotiation skills, market competition at the time, things that are either very difficult to measure or in some cases impossible. So we always
just didn't, right?
Yes.
They were not questions that we were asking. And then a lot of that is just going to be randomness, right? We can't access the inside of the minds of the people inside all of the companies, and you would have to do that if you want to account for it all. So yeah, there is a lot of, I think when you start to learn about stats and learn about research, and particularly in the social sciences, it can be pretty disappointing to find out just how complex the determination of what happens in the real world is, and often how little of the variability we can account for. Yeah, we were very excited to see a number as big as 47%.
We have another example from our
so this one also a really good one. This was slightly over 50%. It's not on the slide, but it was slightly over 50%. But you can see that just in the chart. And so what we're trying to predict here were the influences on the length of a buying cycle. And this was very surprising to us, I think, when we saw the factors that influence it. So just like on the last slide, the factors on the right hand help us understand why one buying process is longer than another. And in this case, I drew the bar under buying group size to illustrate how much of the variability that we can know is actually accounted for by buying group size. And so buying group size is far and away the most influential factor on the length of a buying cycle. I'll talk about that one in a lot of detail in episodes down the line where we get into things like multiple regression. But that's what we can do. With all of these variables here, we are able to predict about half of the reason that one buying cycle is longer than another. That's tremendous, a tremendous kind of model. And we're very excited about that one. And then also able to see what are the most important factors. And this one was probably, I don't know, for me, like the most fun that we've done. And we'll get into it much later.
Just as a brief recap, in statistics, we can measure just how much variability exists. We can distinguish what might be random noise between real drivers of the variation. We can identify factors that explain the variation, and there's ways that we can understand how much impact each variable is having.
That's the fun stuff.
It is. So in our next episode, we will start to dive into the statistics that allows us to understand variability. We will be talking about descriptive versus inferential statistics, what each allows us to do, and the role that it plays in the many questions that we have about business and everyday life. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.